Welcome to Firm Foundations, powered by Parallel 42. This is where faith meets real life and leadership gets personal. I'm your host, Stephen C. Wilson. In each episode, we explore the timeless truths, everyday decisions, and transformational leadership principles that help you build a life that lasts.
Today, we're stepping into a topic that touches every home, every leader, and in every season of life, stewardship and financial wisdom. And to help us navigate that space, I'm joined by Josh Volgarino, Vice President and Wealth Advisor at Farther, one of the nation's most innovative, technology-driven wealth management firms. And Josh brings not just expertise, but a grounded perspective on what it means to honor God with our resources, lead our families with clarity, and think generationally about the legacy that we're building. Whether you're wrestling with financial decisions, planning for the future, or just simply trying to bring your faith and finances into greater alignment, today's conversation is going to meet you right where you're at. So settle in. This is going to be very practical, insightful, and faith-shaping episode. So let's dive in. Josh, thanks for being
Steve.
here on Firm Foundations.
Yeah, excited to be here. Excited to have the conversation about, faith, leadership, finances, all the fun things. So everyone's favorite topics
Yes,
when they have free time. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. Well, if we can throw in a little bit of politics, we'll do that. No, I'm just kidding.
we have a great Thanksgiving for all the family members there.
I'm throwing that in. So, again,
Yeah.
before we get into all this talk about wealth and all of that, love to get a glimpse of your story, how your faith, how faith has shaped the way that you lead, whether it's at work, at home, in your community. So, and take some of this time as well, just again, to introduce yourself to us as well.
Yeah, so I grew up in a family of believers. My dad was a CFO at a Bible college in Dubuque, Iowa, for most of his career, or most of my upbringing, I would say, or all my upbringing.
Mhm.
So it was fun. It was fun and interesting getting to see how my dad viewed money in a corporate sense, an institutional sense of running a Bible college, and also how we viewed it as home life. And the reason I bring that up is I think you are going to be impacted quite a bit by those around you, whether it's friends or family. And my dad, I would say, is my best friend. He was the best man at my wedding, so I spend a lot of time with him. So I got to see that at an interesting level. And as his leadership style was, it was very much faith first. I would say my dad is probably the definition of accountability. If you think about that expression of it's not what you do in the light, it's what you do in the dark. Like my
Yeah.
dad is very much above reproach. So seeing his faith played out that way has had a huge impact in my life of saying, hey, if I'm doing something, whether it's with my money, my life, what I'm saying, and really as it relates to finances, my personal finances and our clients' finances is how is leading by example of what Christ says and what the Bible says
Mhm.
of being above reproach. That's a big part or a big thing. It was like, hey, if
Yeah.
someone said, hey, this about Josh, we'd probably say, hey, that's probably not true, or we'd like to think that. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So the faith is a big part. Yeah.
and it seems like as well, and I know you're involved throughout the community as well, in nonprofits and support of those things there. So as we get talking about here, your the idea of being fiduciary, when did that, when did you first kind of learn that term, and when did that become something that you wanted to be a part of?
Yeah. So I was probably about 4 months into my career. So I was an intern with a large.
So you were about 4 months old. I thought,
I was
oh,
4 months old. Yeah, I was 19. Yeah. No, I was 4 months into my career. I was an intern at a large insurance company. And during that time, I had a prospect. We were both supposed to have a meeting. Meeting got missed. We were trying to reschedule, and she asked me the question of, "Well, are you a fiduciary?" And I didn't know what that word meant. I looked it up, and I hadn't heard any of that being thrown around. I just come back from our annual conference in and everything. I was like, no one said this word. And I went to one of the people who's running the internship program, and I was like, "Hey, I spent some time online. I can't find any of this at our company. Are we legally fiduciaries?" And the response was, "Well, oh, she's been online." But that was literally the response. And as I dug into it, I was like, this is pretty absurd that this is an industry standard of that we have to be a fiduciary when people are trusting us with knowledge that they don't have to be managing their money.
Hmm.
And especially as it relates to our like my faith background is like, hey, doing to others you would have them doing to you, right? That's a big part of the Christian world and the spiritual and whatnot is loving people like Christ loves them.
Right.
So when I heard that, I was like, well, that's just a given. Even I don't know how long I'll be at this firm. I know I'm going to be in this industry long term. So I'm going to function as the fiduciary, regardless of my contract is that or not.
So
And there's,
for our
go
listeners
ahead.
and for me even,
Yeah. What does the term mean?
a
Yeah.
fiduciary. Yeah. What is a
Yeah.
fiduciary?
Yeah. So it's such a I feel like it's a term that gets thrown around a lot without people really understanding it. So fiduciary means that if you are working with someone, whether they are your banker, your wealth advisor, your trustee, whatever it may be, if they are in a fiduciary capacity, they are legally obligated to be working in your best interest instead of their own, which is like a no duh. If you're going to hire someone, that's kind of what you want, right? They're
Right. Yeah.
working for you.
Yeah.
Um, but not all people are held to that.
Okay.
Like their contracts, their legal contracts aren't all held to that standard. So then you get into this idea of like, well, what's the internal drive of this person?
Yeah.
And in the industry that I'm in, sadly, it can be very motivating to not act in a fiduciary capacity.
Yeah.
Um, we saw this in 2016, or with a large financial institution that got caught with being on fiduciary in the banking world, and the ripple effect that that has. And I think that comes a lot when you get misaligned with a core value. And if your core value is your faith and wanting to stand before God and hear the words, well done, good and faithful servant, a fiduciary capacity is a must core value.
Yeah. So not only in the secular,
Mhm.
it's a necessary thing, or it should
Yeah.
be a necessary thing, and but then when you throw on that additional layer of your faith and what
Hmm.
drives you, all the more reason for you wanting to. Sounds like all the more reason for you saying no. Yes, that is what I want.
Yeah. That it's such a big deal. In my opinion, it's such a big deal as being able to work in that capacity and be able to sleep well at night. Such a big deal.
Yeah. Is
And
there
being able to live that out. Go ahead.
Yeah, is there one or two? Are there one or two scriptures that really kind of drive you in your work, or your decision making at all, or scriptures
Yeah.
in
So
particular?
big scripture verse. I remember reading this in high school, and this being a pretty core verse for me is First Corinthians 10:31, where it says, "Whether eating or sleeping, do all things unto the glory of God," which are pretty two basic things that I
Yeah,
do every day. I eat and I sleep. And it's like, hey, if I'm going to do those two things under the glory of God, the little basic things, I should probably do all these other things under the glory of God.
yeah,
And that means being a trustworthy, faithful person for
mm,
people. So big deal.
yeah, yeah. So as we're talking here, we're talking money, we're talking faith. I know stewardship has come up many
Mm.
times in our conversations, but I want to ask you, uh, Christians wrestle with that tension between financial success, right? Want to be financially success, want to have retirement, want to have all these things in a row, but then also spiritual priorities. Uh,
Hmm.
so how do you then take those terms or that term, biblical stewardship, and fit it into and help with that tension? How do you address that?
Yeah, great question. So I think biblical stewardship is saying, hey, if you have a resource, regardless of it's big or small, you need to use that in a good way, right? In Matthew 6:24, Jesus says you can't serve two masters. And in 2021, I was meeting with a pastor, and he quoted that verse from a perspective of, hey, I don't make a lot of money. but because I don't make a lot of money, I need to be really good with what I have.
Right.
And I thought that was really great because normally when I think about that text and growing up thinking, hearing that text, I always related it to, oh, you can't serve two masters, so don't make too much money.
Oh,
Which, thinking about it from the perspective of like, hey, regardless of what you have, if this is becoming king and lord of your life, it's wrong. You need to make sure that you're treating it respectfully and being good and faithful with what you have. And I'd say that goes beyond just money. Like the other day, my daughter made a mess on our table and I was cleaning it up, and she's at the stage where everything's a why. And she asked me why we do that. I'm like, well, we have this table. We can't just let it get destroyed and ruined and fall apart. We have to take good care of it. So I think that's regardless of its stewardship goes beyond just your finances. It's making sure you're managing all things in your house well.
yeah. Um, how then? So when you're
Yeah, go ahead.
you're speaking with a family, with a couple,
Mhm.
um, as it relates to this, I guess what are some of the discussion points that they bring up, that the struggle, help us
Yeah.
understand that struggle that folks have.
Yeah. So I think a big struggle we see a lot is actions versus priorities. So clients will talk, core question I'm going to ask in every meeting or every initial time we're engaging with someone is, what's your philosophy with money? And in that question, you get a lot of different answers. Um, One of the things that you'll sometimes hear, or something I'll sometimes hear, is the idea of like, well, I'm going to live for today because tomorrow's not guaranteed. 100% true. However, the probability of tomorrow happening is really, really high. And if you're married and you have kids, they're probably going to be around afterwards. So, yeah, you shouldn't get bogged down in putting all your making your savings account or your 401k and IRA your king and trying to build that up super, super high, but you still need to be diligent and manage these resources appropriately.
Mhm.
So it's about finding that balance between the two, but that's a common question where we get a lot of that. Um, Goals, we'll spend a lot of time talking with people. What's your goal? What do you want to do in life? And there are people that we see whose goal is to die with the largest net worth possible, which we would argue, hey, that's probably not the best stewardship.
Right.
Or if your goal is just to have fun, that's great, but that's maybe not the best way to do it. There's the fine line between the two of enjoying life today, but also still thinking about the future. And I think that's a good way to look at it.
I would assume as well in your discussions with folks that you uncover some misconceptions about
Mhm.
wealth and from whether they're believer that's a leader or just believers in general. What are some of those? I mean, I'm just thinking of, it's like, okay, well, if you're a believer, you need to be poor and destitute and that type. Or then you have on the other scale of, my father owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, and I'm going to be wealthy and I'm going to strive for that. Just where's that? I guess that balance and um, how do you again address some of that?
Yeah. So I've had that happen before where I remember early on in my career, I was meeting with a guy, he's probably in his 30s, wasn't saving anything. And we were like, hey, what's your story here? What's your situation? Why aren't you planning more? And he's like, well, my dad's worth $10 million and it's me and two siblings. So there's three of us. So when he passes away, I'll just inherit 3 million bucks or whatever it is at that time, and I'll be good to go. And it was just kind of like, I don't think we're a good fit. And we tried to talk to him about, hey, what if your dad has a change of heart? What if he goes to a Warren Buffett and is going to try to gift all his assets away and then you're stuck? And that was a big one of just like, hey, you need to be using what you have. And if you get an inheritance, great, but that doesn't give you, I find that most people who are really wealthy didn't become really wealthy for their kids not to do something. They became really wealthy by busting the tail and pounding the stone, which
Yeah.
I think is a misconception of most wealth that was created. I remember talking with a buddy. I just left a meeting with a business owner, and afterwards, the business owner was like in his 30 years old, crushing it. And I was like, man, this guy is 30 years old. this is when I was like 24. I was like, man, this guy's 30 years old, already worth a couple $1 million. Man, he's really getting after. He's like, well, he probably inherited a ton of money. He was like, actually, he grew up in like Section 8 housing and just pounded the stone and blah, blah, blah. So I think there's that misconception that rich people are all inherited. It's like, no, most of the time, like they pounded the stone and just were really disciplined.
Yeah, that's
I think those are some misconceptions.
an
Yeah.
encouraging message to communicate as well. So let's think about it.
Yeah.
Families can think about money in a way that reinforces their faith, their character, those habits. What are some things that how can families think about? How do we want them to be thinking about? And I guess maybe again reverting back to maybe some of the conversations you've had to help kind of move folks into that direction.
Yeah. So I think teaching kids is they're going to observe and see what their parents do and how they're going to grow. So my wife and I, we were driving down the other day, we were having a conversation around some money stuff, and our kids were in the back seat. And halfway through the conversation, it wasn't good or bad. It was just basic parent adulting money stuff. And I was kind of like, our kids are getting a very healthy adult conversation around money and observing how we think about it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if you spend time in the car with your kids, they're going to hear whatever conversations you have, for better or worse.
Yeah.
And I think having those conversations with your kids, helping them understand why you're doing what you're doing sooner than later, is going to be pretty impactful. Now, obviously, if they're like 3 or 4 and you're like, hey, son, this is why I put money in a 401k and here's time value of money, that's
Right.
probably going to go way over the head.
Yeah.
However, helping them educate is a really good spot. I think another thing to do is that if you were to ask yourself, again, are you being a good steward with what you currently have, and have a real challenging conversation? We're here in December. January, everyone has their New Year's resolutions, and that's when we find a lot of people start wanting to have these financial conversations, December and January, because the new year, new me type of thing. You have to be real and honest with yourself of, hey, am I doing the right things? Am I managing this the right way? Am I spending more than I should? Or am I hoarding all this up? Am I finding the balance there on both sides of the spectrum?
Yeah.
So, I don't know if that helps, but
Yeah, it does. So looking at it from a family perspective, but now business owners, business leaders, what are some of those types of conversations that you have as it relates to stewardship, legacy, those types of conversations?
yeah. So we work a lot with business owners, and we spend a lot of time talking around finding some level of balance. Like most of the time with business owners, a big thing we talk a lot about is legacy planning. A lot of the business owners we've talked to have done really well, and they're at that stage where they're about to go through this liquidation event. It's like, hey, you probably have more than enough money than you're going to spend, and you've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it. Some more literal than others, but you've put a lot into this thing, and now you're probably not going to be able to spend it all. How do you want to be remembered? Whether it's by your kids, your grandkids, your great grandkids, or in the community. We're in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where we've got a lot of great legacy donors in the community that will be remembered for centuries after they've passed away.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot with a lot of our business owners as they go through this about that, of like, do you want to be remembered there? I think something else we spend time talking about is, how do you want to be remembered, not just by your family or your friends, but by your employees? Because at the end of the day, that's the biggest one too, is your employees. They talk about you, or how their families talk about you. Is it going to be a big deal as also, especially in the legacy part?
Hmm. I would assume that you have these conversations whether they're believers or not.
Mhm. Yeah, because we think that's an important thing, regardless of where you're at. We try to have donor conversations of some type, or charitable giving, maybe we should say, type of conversations at every level with our client, to find out where they're at and to help with that, because that's a big deal for them personally, and also for everyone else in the country also.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I can imagine. So yeah, I'm just again thinking about the how it's just creating a shift, I guess, a way of um thinking, a mindset for people to have. Do you have any and this is just kind of off the cuff here, story of any aha moments that individuals have had that come to mind?
Yeah, so we had a client who he came to us about 5 years ago, making pretty good money, was saving maybe, I want to say again, thinking back to this, he was saving about 5% of his income.
Hmm.
And in our conversation, we're like, hey, so you're saving about 5% of your income, you make decent money. Fast forward 40 years from now, um, this what you're saving right now, you're not going to make what you're currently making. And your income's going to keep going up pretty dramatically. He was in his 30s at the time, or early 30s. Now he's approaching 40s. And we were saying, hey, your income's not going to keep going up or your income's going to start to accelerate, but your saving at 5% isn't going to match your acceleration for your retirement.
Okay.
So he started saving a little bit more. I think he went from 5% to 7%. And then we were talking a few months later, and I was talking about a different client who didn't save enough and pretty much was mirroring him, but was 30 years his senior,
Okay.
and sharing the story of what was going through this guy's world of like he had to adjust his whole entire lifestyle in retirement. And my buddy was like, I don't want to do that. And it's been interesting seeing as his income has gone up, his savings rate has gone up, but I would argue his lifestyle has gone up as well. And he's probably he's one of my friends and a client, but he has the best balance or relationship as I would relate with fun and savings, because he just works in the guardrail of saving about 20% of his income and enjoying the other 80% there.
Hmm.
And I find that that's been probably one of my biggest ahas or favorite client success stories, is seeing someone go from being kind of afraid for him to now being like, dude, you got it. You're able to go have fun without needing to feel guilty, and you're able to continue to keep this current fun rate up.
Yeah.
And seeing the charitable impact he's having in his community as well with some of the giving and strategies he's been implementing.
Yeah, being able to
Yeah.
step back and see that impact. So, in our podcast, we talk a lot about leadership, and
Mhm.
leadership is about influence. And
Mhm.
so, looking at it from a financial perspective, there, how does financial clarity, um,
Mhm.
the other side of that, right? Chaos. How does that impact someone's ability to lead well?
Yeah, so from outside looking in, the clients I've observed who do a really good job in their leadership world have the most clarity on their financial picture. They don't have, because that's taken care of. Like you look at like top five reasons for a divorce. One of the big reasons for fighting or that can lead to a divorce is bad financial management. And I would say the same thing is going to lead in a business is bad financial management. And I think if you have a bad financial management, the personal side, you see that a lot in the business side, not where they're stealing or doing anything wrong, but they don't have the clarity of where things are going. So
Yeah.
things get mismanaged, things fall through the cracks, there's constant stress just because we don't know what we don't know.
Hmm.
One of the things that we've observed in being to help these business owners is saying, hey, let's gain a picture of where you're going so that you can de-stress over here, be more present with your family, but that also helps you be more present in your business and how you lead because you're able to work from a position of strength. You're able to make more CapEx expenditures, knowing that all these other things are taken care of and be able to grow and lead a lot more clearly.
Hmm.
That's one thing we've observed from engaging with clients in that world. I think the other thing is asking great questions of like, hey, what are you doing? If you think about SWOT analysis, it's super cheesy, but it's really, really great. It's
Yeah.
stupid simple. Just ask yourself strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And walking through that with clients, we've noticed is very beneficial for them to be able to say, hey, why would I lose this key employee?
Hmm.
What's my biggest threat to my company as it relates to operations or taxes or the financials right now? Like walking through those things, it has been really helpful.
So when we talk about again financial integrity, just looking at it from the secular, but putting on top of there that layer of being a believer, what does that what does that look like? Again, home, work, but that additional layer. What is that? Yeah, just simply there. What does that look like?
Yeah. So again, integrity, I think when I think about financial integrity, especially as it relates to the leadership side of it, is if someone was to say, and this kind of has to go with reputation, kind of like I was talking about my dad earlier within
Right.
this is like if someone was to say, Josh did this or Steve is doing this, it'd be so outlandish to your character that no one would believe you. Or it's the idea of like, hey, if I left $500 on my desk with my door open and I left, Steve's not going to come in and take it,
Right.
right? It's what
Right.
you. I think that is a big part of integrity is doing what you say and keeping those promises regardless if people are watching.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes a lot of moral compass. That there's obviously everyone's like, well, I just want to do that, but it's having the accountability behind it and just the why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then again, you throw in that additional layer of representing Christ, and
yeah,
it
all the
just
things we've already said. Yeah,
it
yeah,
it, it heightens that. So when you think about the legacy, you've mentioned that a few times. What does Because again, legacy is not just the financial piece, but what does
Mhm.
wealth in that case really mean to you? Again, beyond those dollars. When you talk about, hey, are you interested in building a legacy? What are you meaning when you talk about that?
yeah. So again, from a wealth perspective, it is a lot about, hey, how are you going to be remembered? Um, you can be remembered as a total grouch who just leaves money. Like you can be Scrooge, or if Scrooge passed away, just leave a bunch of money that way, right?
Right.
But what's the story behind that money as well? Is there a story that you left money while you were alive that you had an impact on that people are like, hey, he was really generous while he was alive, not just when he passed away. And we saw him not just die with all this money. And then once he knew he had everything he needed, then he impacted and shared the charities. But was he also giving while he was alive? I think that's a big part of legacy. It's also, you think about the resources, right? There's money, talents, very important ones, but you can get more of those two things. But the one you can't get more of is your time.
Yeah.
And are you not just saying these things and giving money to these things, but are you also showing up? I think that's a big part of legacy is writing checks is great. Don't get me wrong. Showing up is more powerful, I think, because people see that and that has a compounding effect as well.
Hmm.
I mean, I think that's how you get it beyond just your generation of not everyone's rich, right? Not everyone's going to have money. Not all your kids are going to financially be up in the same spot. So it's easy to be like, well, dad or grandpa gave all this money, but I don't make the same money good dad or grandpa make. Dad and grandpa were always charitable with their time. So I'm going to be as well, even if financially I'm not in that same. Are you leading in that world is a big deal with, again, all three times, talent, money.
Yeah. I think sometimes, yeah, we can. I know just in discussions, we can sometimes just focus on money as
Yeah.
it needs to, and we know that there's so much more uh, additional ways that we can give, we can serve beyond.
If you go to any nonprofit, regardless if it's a Christian nonprofit, or religious faith-based nonprofit, or a non-faith-based nonprofit, if you were to be like, "Hey, how can I help?" and have $0, they'll all have something for you. They're not just going to be like, "Well, we only take checks."
Right.
They'll all have something for you to do.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, then when you throw in that layer of being a believer,
Yeah,
it heightens that calling, if you will. So
yeah.
when
And I think
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think something a lot of people think of giving, they're like, "Oh, well, I have to give 10%," which nowhere in the New Testament you need to give 10%. And if you're saying that and you feel convicted about that, great. But it's more about just giving what you can. So if you feel convicted to give more, you should give more. It's not if you can only give five, you give five. Uh, Jesus literally, literally a story in the Bible about giving what you can in the parable or the story that Jesus tells. The lady giving just like a penny, basically.
Right. Yeah. 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 She gave
Yeah,
what, two mites, right? And And he's saying, yeah, that's more than any of you gave, right? Because
Yeah.
it was out of her ability to give what she had to give. She gave there. Yeah, yeah. I've seen it many years and many years. Uh, I've been involved in counting offerings and different things like that, and it's interesting, of seeing folks with 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 checks, like $98.33, and it's now
You gotta
now
get the 10%. Yeah.
right now many have then given over and above that, but there seems that okay, here's my 10%, I'm gonna
Yeah.
and I'm a rounder anyway, and so but when I see
Oh
that,
yeah. I'm a round to the dollar.
yeah,
Cents of pennies.
just makes me
Yeah.
chuckle there. So, how do you? My guess is they're at different places, but how do you help clients then align their? Give me an example of how you help them align their financial future with their faith, their values, and the callings that they may have.
Yeah. So what we try to do is when we're coming in and doing wealth management for clients, there's some people that we're not really coming in and redoing everything. So typically the way we like to look at it is saying, hey, we are unpacking the dirty toolbox that's been in your garage for several years and that you've never opened. So we're unpacking all the different things that you've accumulated over the 20, 30 years of working, old 401ks, IRAs, insurance contracts and everything. And we're hearing all your goals and everything. And then based on your goals, we're re-putting everything back in the toolbox, cleaned up, dusted off, and earmarking everything to accomplish what you want to accomplish.
Yeah.
And one of the first things we talk a lot about retirement planning. That's kind of a given. Financial independence, that's a given. And in that, we're also talking about what's the desire to be left over. So how do we change goals? How do we change things? We had a client that we recently brought on. She's a first generation immigrant from South America, has two kids, and her biggest goal is she had a lot of really cool goals that she wanted to do. She wanted to go to every Michelin star restaurant in the US. But she also wanted to make sure her kids had pretty large dollar amount as well. And she was like, I'm gonna have to work till I'm 70 plus to be able to do this. Well, we took out all her resources and said, here's where all your assets are at.
Mhm.
Here's based on your goals and based on our financial planning software that we use. Here's where you're at for probability of being able to accomplish all of this stuff. And you don't have to work till 70. You actually only have to work till like 65 to do that because she's very frugal in her day-to-day life, minus her really big goal of wanting to go to all the Michelin star restaurants. And it really comes down to not necessarily have a hope based strategy, but more of dialing in the numbers and refining, hey, here's what the math says, and building it from a math perspective than just a hope as a strategy, if that makes
Yeah. No.
sense. So that's
Yeah.
been
I've heard,
very fun and very rewarding
right,
being
that
able to
not a
help that.
strategy, right? Hope is not a strategy. Uh,
Yeah. Which
yeah.
seems like a lot of people have with their money, which is very interesting.
It is, yeah. So as we come to a close here, I want to turn some things just to
Yeah.
our, I know that listeners are picking things up as we go, but specifically, if you could encourage your listeners with one truth about faith and finances, what would it be?
Yeah. I think as it relates to finances is the boring strategy wins. Most of the time we see people who have gotten to the seven figures or what have you, or financial independence. It did not happen by buying um, a meme stock and it blowing up 10x, and that's how they made it. Is typically pretty boring consistency, compounding interest over time. That's one thing.
Yeah,
Um, as it relates to faith and finances, it's really easy to get anxious with your money and really anxious in the news and everything going on. And I would say, hey, ignore all of that and build a plan. And for planning, there's a lot of different places to start. I would say a lot of it starts with your monthly spend because that's going to show us a lot of where your heart is where are you spending your money, and starting to build a good balance sheet and building a good budget will really control a lot of that finance and anxiousness.
yeah. Well, hey,
Just trust. Yeah.
I'm believing in the rapture, and it's going to happen, and so I don't have to care. I don't have to care about all that stuff, Josh.
Yeah, well, if you said that in 1900s, you would be very disappointed by the 1940s or 1960s and everything. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
and beyond. So, all right. So, someone wanted to just, I guess, maybe begin to do something simple now.
Or to budget. There's a lot of great resources. You can go to youneedabudget.com. You can go to Rocket Money. There's this great thing called Excel. I don't know if anyone hasn't heard of that. Google Drive. Just start a budget. Look at your balance sheet. Look to see where's your money going. That's probably a great. If you have never done that, that's the first place. It's kind of like working out. Before, if you want to lose weight, first find out how much you weigh. Step on a scale. Do a budget, or look at your spending. That'd be the first place.
Yeah.
Second, I would say is find all your accounts and them up, do a balance sheet or a net worth statement. Add up all your assets minus your liabilities. And I would look at it from two perspectives, not to get too complicated here. I'd look at your total net worth and then your liquid net worth, meaning your total net worth might be adding in your house, business value, 401ks, IRAs, all that stuff. Take out the things that you couldn't snap your fingers and get to within 24 hours. And I think that shows a really true picture. There's a lot of people right now who are house rich just because houses have gone up in value. However, if you were in an oh no moment and you needed money, you're probably not going to sell your house to get that or take out a loan, which then puts you back in where you were. So I think that is a great place to start is look at your spending and then look at your net worth, total net worth, and then your liquid net worth.
Okay. And finally, if folks want to connect with you, what's the best way?
Yeah, LinkedIn, email. Those would probably be the two main ways, LinkedIn or email. Yeah.
Okay. And your email is?
Yeah, josh.volgarino@farther.com.
Okay. Excellent. Josh,
Awesome.
thanks for being a guest on Firm Foundations.
Yeah. Pete, thanks for having me. It's been fun.